folks, there's a lot to unpack from CDL Playoffs. So to kind of start this week off in preparation for Champs Weekend, I wanted to give my top 5 takeaways from this event. Again, like I said, there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of things that I wanted to kind of dive in deep to. But after CDL Playoffs, after all the insane matches that we had, a lot of storylines kind of continuing on, a lot of storylines kind of closing out until we have the next title or the next CDL season, I wanted to kind of take some time and dive in very quickly to 5 major things that I took away from CDL Playoffs. So the first thing that kind of stuck off the page to me was the Florida Mutineers, right? Not the same team anymore. That's kind of the tagline that I associate now with the Mutineers, is that they are not the same team as they were a few months ago, right? They're the only top team, or the only team that was in the top 4, the only team with the bye to not make it to Champs Weekend. They finish 0-2 in results, losing to the Ultra 3-1 and getting knocked out by OGLA 3-0. So they go 0-2 in series and they win 1 map, right? I think a lot of people aren't going to realize, looking at a result standpoint, because the Mutineers over the last few weeks, over the last few months, after their back-to-back victory in which they look like the best team in the CDL, they've kind of slowly started to trickle down a little bit. And so I think a lot of people aren't going to realize that the Mutineers go 1-6. 1-6 in maps. I mean, granted, these are good teams that they're facing off against. But when you are a team who has a bye, you're going to face off against good teams, right? I mean, what we talked about at the start of the playoffs, 6 out of the 12 teams in the CDL, they won, right? They won a home series. That goes to show the level of competition that we have. When we go from 16 now down to 12 teams, coming in from Black Ops 4, now here to Modern Warfare, that goes to show the amount of talent that does exist. So they can't, for me at least, they don't get the pass of, oh yeah, they faced off against good teams. No, Ultra, they're fine. OGLA, a good roster. No question about it. But if you want to compare those teams to the roster that we saw go back-to-back, they don't compare. Right? I don't think any team can compare to what we saw the Mutineers do back in Minnesota and back in Paris. So to say the least, I was incredibly disappointed by what I saw from the Mutineers. It was not a way that they wanted to kind of end out the season. As like I said, a few months ago, they were far and away the best team in the CDL. And I will say it until someone disproves it, they looked like the best team. Right? At any point where a team has looked good, at any point when a team has looked dominant, no team looked better than the Mutineers did when they were going back-to-back. It was incredible, and it's sad to say the Mutineers end not their season in a way that probably people thought they would coming into the year based off the placement, but based off of what we saw a few months ago, it's a very noticeable decline. All right, next thing that I took away, Royal Ravens, right? Are the losers bracket team. They made the run. The question coming into the year, or rather coming into the playoffs, was who's going to be the team to make a loser's bracket run. I gave my prediction. I thought it was going to be Optic Gaming. 1 round away from possibly being that, but still, like I said, every year a team makes a loser's bracket run at COD Champs. This is the 8th one that we've ever had, and in the 7 prior years, every team, right, rather a team at every COD Champs has at least made a run from losers round 2 to losers semi-finals. The Ravens are also going to be added to that list. And I've been very impressed with their run so far. So not only are they the team to make the losers bracket run, but I was kind of surprised that it was, in fact, London. Just kind of coming into this based on the matchups that they had. I had the opportunity to commentate over a lot of their series. I saw a lot of things that I was very, very impressed with. To kind of start off their losers bracket run after getting taken down by the Ultra in their first matchup. They take down the Paris Legion 3-1. That was a big grudge match, as it's the Battle of Europe. 2 teams that have been kind of storied since launch weekend of who was going to be better versus the other. Paris has kind of dominated that storyline for a very long time. And most recently at the London home series, the Legion did knock out the Ravens in a Game 5 round 11, which was absolutely unbelievable. One of the best series of the year. So it was big, right? You start off, if you're the Ravens, you start off taking down a team that has caused you a lot of problems throughout the season. Then you move on to face off against the Subliners, a team that I think was a dark horse for many, a roster that definitely had some potential considering the way that they kind of closed out the season. In terms of their most recent home series, it was not great, but the one prior to that, they go on to win their own home series. They looked dominant in the final. It was going to be interesting to see how the Ravens faced off in this, and they showed some really good resilience. Very impressed with how they looked after they were down 2-1. They managed to bring it back. And then they have the Toronto rematch, right? They lose to this team 3-1. They rematch them. They then beat them 3-1. This Ultra lineup, I believe they were on it was like a 6 or 7 map streak, or rather 6 or 7 series streak, taking down a lot of the top rosters. Obviously prior to losing in that losers bracket, or in the winners bracket, but was very impressed with what we saw from the Ravens. They take down a very hot Ultra lineup. And one thing for me that has stood out from the Ravens is the support cast, right? The guys who have really stepped up to the plate, outside of someone like Wuskin, who has, had a phenomenal season, definitely a player who has kind of been just on the outside of the Astro MVP candidates. We've seen Shawnee step up dramatically. He had a number of different incredible performances, a major clutch versus New York in that Game 5 over on Ramaza. We've seen Zero kind of start off the playoffs looking like one of his best events of the entire year. And the Ravens lineup, they've looked better in hardpoint. They can be a problem in search and destroy, but domination for me is still a big question mark, but very impressed with what I've seen from the Ravens so far. Next big point, Optic Gaming Los Angeles. Better than ever, right? They looked absolutely fantastic after the crazy and chaotic Game 5 that Optic has to endure, where obviously Quavo's getting hit off. He has to kind of back out for now. Dashy steps in, goes huge with the sniper in that Piccadilly to move them on in the losers bracket. This team, they reached another level. And you know what? Texas Kenny, we talked about his transition obviously from Cali, now here to Texas. He goes from like a 0.98 to like a 1.2 or 1.3. Absolutely insane stuff coming through from Kenny. We've seen a lot of the rookies go big for them. Draws and Hollow had some really big moments throughout a lot of the clutch situations, especially in the search and destroys as well. And outside of the expected performance from someone like Slasher, TJ, right, by far, at least for me, best event of the season for him, right? Best event for TJ was here at Champs, had so many major moments that allowed for the team to see a ton of success. And like I said, I was very impressed with the run that this team made, was incredibly impressed with the performance that they put up, especially against the Huntsmen, which now leads me to my next point, right? Chicago Huntsmen versus Optic Gaming Los Angeles, another takeaway. Best series all year long, right? Best series that we have seen so far in the CDL. It is one of the best series that we have seen in COD Champs history, one of the best series that we have seen in Call of Duty esports history. And this series in particular, this is what makes Champs fun to watch. And I know that the transition from LAN to online, it's been difficult from a number of different perspectives, from a number of different parties. It has been hard. But this, for me, just goes to show how much fun COD is, because when you have a storyline like this, when you have a matchup of this caliber, knowing what's on the line, it's hard to beat it. From any esports perspective, it is hard to beat something like this. And again, like I said, the storyline coming into this is the old Optic versus the new Optic. The recent victory that OG had versus the Huntsmen at the Toronto home series definitely kind of played a part. And the fact that the loser is eliminated, Huntsmen could have very well finished off with a top 6 placement here at Champs. And everyone knows the 7th place. Big thing for the old Optic back in the day. That was a huge storyline of Optic always finishing in 7th place. Obviously, it's top 6 here, but you still get the point. And it comes down to a Game 5, round 11, 1v1. It doesn't get closer than this. And that particular gunfight was absolutely massive. And it was an amazing story as well, because the one guy who does not have a world championship on the lineup, the one guy who finished top 32 last year, a guy who is an Illinois native, a guy who's been waiting for his opportunity in Envoy, not a rookie, but still in his 2nd season, you could say really technically 3rd, but just in general, his kind of first opportunity to play for a lineup versus the Huntsmen, he clutches it up and manages to win a massive 1v1 and totally changes up the rest of the tournament leading into Champs Weekend. Again, one of the best series that we have ever seen, and the 1v1 that I'm sure is going to be on the mouths of people for a very, very long time, mine included. Now, last point, last kind of major takeaway for me here at the playoffs was the Atlanta FaZe versus Chicago Huntsmen matchup, right? That one lived up to the hype, and I know that it's not maybe as talked about after the major, like I said, Game 5, Round 11 that we have for OGLA and Huntsman. But this series was also a thriller, right? I mean, last time it was a 3-0 for Chicago. It was a very, very hyped up match coming into that particular event. Everyone's thinking, oh, this is going to go Game 5. There's a lot of potential here. and Chicago pretty much just rinsed them out. But this one goes to a Game 5, Round 10. I think this kind of, for me at least, it gives us a glimpse, right? It kind of gives us a glimpse for what to expect when we talk about the Final Four, the way that all of these teams have competed, the way that all of them look right now. I think we very well could see a lot of kind of final map search and destroys that kind of decide everything. And that's been how a lot of the top teams have managed to move on, right? It's been through clutching. We saw that from the Empire. We saw it from FaZe. We see it from Huntsman here. London, a number of different Game 5s that they had to win to get to this point as well. So for me, clutching, kind of closing up those big moments is how Champs has historically kind of gone for some of the top rosters. And I think it says the same for this one as well. But I think, again, every match has the ability to be close, and it's going to come down to who's kind of more collected in the clutch, if you will. But those were kind of my top 5 takeaways from CDL Playoffs. If you have any that I maybe missed, you can feel free to let us know down in the comments. I'm very, very excited to see exactly how Champs Weekend does round things out, as our top 4 teams are going to be competing against one another. But again, playoffs, definitely an event to remember.